Hello, OIS podcast audience. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Robert Rothman. I am a clinically practicing ophthalmologist. I'm a glaucoma specialist by training, working with OCLI in Long Island. I do that for about 50% of my working hours, and the other time I spend running InFocus Capital Partners, which is an ophthalmology-specific venture capital fund that is fully deployed at this point. We've had our first exit about 6 months ago, currently navigating hopefully successful exits for several remaining assets in the fund over the next few years. One of the things that I like to do for fun and to stay on top of what's happening in ophthalmology is to interview very interesting people for the OIS listening audience. And today we have a very interesting person who I not only have a personal connection to, it turns out, but who I think is doing something incredibly important in an area of ophthalmic service that is incredibly underserved. And I think having an opportunity to speak with Dr. Zaken and her company is kind of important, kind of gets to the spirit of what innovation in ophthalmology is all about. So with that, and no pressure, Grace, so don't worry about it, is Dr. Grace Ambrose-Zaken. She is the president and CEO of Safe Toddles. She is one of the world's leading experts in orientation mobility, especially as it relates to early intervention. And she is the inventor of the device that is the centerpiece of Safe Toddles, the company that she's founded. And I have had other podcast guests on this space who in this discussion forum that have tried to address some of what I consider, and I think everybody considers to be a significant lack of funding when it comes to vision impairment. And we have seen the advent of augmented and virtual reality trying to take over some of the absence, some of the void that's been left with regard to the, I would say, a little bit sort of less than stellar development of mobility devices. And what Grace has done is come up with something really simple and intuitive that could have a huge impact on so many children. And, here it is kind of hanging out, waiting to break out. And we're going to talk to Grace about how she got here and what some of the challenges are for her and her company going forward. So Grace, welcome. And thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
Well, thank you, Rob. What a lovely introduction.
Yeah. This is important stuff, as you and I have had a chance to talk about previously. So, Grace, I think one of the things that's most important, and I think is incredibly irrelevant as it relates to you, is how you got here. Just like kind of what your background is, where you came from, and how did this end up being your passion and your calling?
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but my hyphenated name, Ambrose-Zaken. My father, Stephen Ambrose, was a well-known author and pundit, and he took us everywhere every summer. My mom said, we have 5 kids. We have to do something other than let them lie around the house watching TV.
Well, hold on. I want to interrupt you right there. There are a lot of people. Say your father's name again.
Stephen E. Ambrose.
And please tell everybody what he's done, because when I heard that, I'm like, wait a second, not that Stephen Ambrose. It's that Stephen Ambrose. Go ahead.
Well, if you've been to New Orleans, you may have gone to the National World War II Museum, and my father co-founded that. And he also is an amazingly prolific author whose books still resoundingly mean a lot to people today, like Band of Brothers, that is the HBO miniseries was made out of, and Saving Private Ryan was made out of his work. So he wrote a lot of impactful historical works that read like a novel and are just so great because of that. It really has brought a lot of people to history and to World War II. Nixon.
Yeah, and I had no idea about that before we spoke. And I've read many of your father's books, and I was like, wait, that's Stephen Ambrose. Wait a second. So pretty amazing. So sorry to interrupt, but I think that people will find that super interesting. Go ahead.
It's wonderful. I miss him every day. But that camping was what we did. And so being out on the trail, we hiked 40 miles on the Lolo Trail. We canoed 90 miles on the Missouri River. We packed our own pack. Travel, moving around, knowing how to read a map, how to be independently able to start your own fire. These things somehow prepared me for working in orientation mobility, which is a field that you teach someone who is blind to independently navigate their world using a white cane. And I taught that for 25 years in New York City at Hunter College. And I like to say over 100 graduates. I didn't lose one, right? So no one fell in the subway tracks.
Thank
And the
God.
reason was the white cane, right? They could have 2 steps of warning. It would tell them where the drop off was exactly. And that would prevent them from stepping any further. And it was my work. I was gifted a library of journals. I read all of them, to cover, and um, everything from, say, 1793 on. I read about our field, and it finally hit me on the subway. The problem with early intervention was they needed to be able to have a cane. They needed to have that 2 steps of protection that my students enjoyed as graduate students, and they could get very easily with this white cane. So easy to teach a graduate student, but you can't teach a baby who's blind to use this same tool. So I was just like, what? I was like, what if they could wear it? That's what babies need. They need something easy that they just strap on. And from that was 2014. And I went running into my office, and I saw the first person I saw, I told her, and she was a teacher of the visually impaired. And she's like, oh, yeah, you should put music on it. So it's right there was the misunderstanding of the basic need of a blind child, which is the tactile feedback, 2 steps ahead. They don't need any additional accoutrement. They just
Right.
need to know, where is that drop off? How close am I to the subway drop off? That's the information they needed, just like everybody else. But they didn't get it until this device. And that's what's exciting.
Right. So the fundamental issue for somebody who's blind is that they actually have to use their hands. Right? They have to use their hands. They have to have a device in their hand in order to be able to navigate the world. Well,
Yes.
what if they can't walk, right? What if they're, a child who hasn't at walking age yet, and now you're asking them to take their balance tool, right, which is their arm or their hand, and hold on to something and navigate. Does
Yes.
that have any impact on functional development? I mean, I think we've all seen young children who are, let's say, blind, completely blind, who don't walk well, right? And
Right.
they have some other muscular inability. Is that a result of this problem, or is it sort of coexistent? I mean, I'm not, as an ophthalmologist, this is not something we're trained and not something that I've learned. So I'm asking you both for my own benefit and for the benefit of the audience, why was that the concept?
Well, the unfortunate thing is that in all of our textbooks, wherever you study, what the chapter on blind children says is they don't walk on time.
Right.
They will be motor delayed. They will have developmental delays, and so the parents bring that little child in, and that's the news that's been given for the past 100+ years. And many parents say, not my baby. And then you get into, there's some babies who seem more resilient. Somehow they make it through those first 5 years and demonstrate the skills, go on to graduate high school. And these are our superstars. But there's a large, vast majority that walk into the office, even those kids holding on to a hand, and if they let go of the hand, they stand still. And you can't, like, you're like, come on, you can walk, I know you can walk. But if you were blindfolded, and I asked you to stay that way and just run through your house, run through your office, run through your field, you wouldn't, because you would have a self-protected mode. No one has ever respected a blind child enough to say, you know what, maybe they're the smartest person in the room. Maybe they know it is unsafe, because they are blind, to take a step unless they're holding the hand. That is how they've learned to safely get around. They didn't choose it. It was chosen for them. If I hold a hand, I'm going to be navigated around much quickly, much more efficient to wherever we're going. So to get to any meaningful destination, they wait for a helping hand. They've been taught that, right, since very little. And many people have adults have turned that around onto them, saying, oh, they, in the textbooks, they prefer to sit quietly. They prefer to play with their own bodies. They don't want to be social. Rather than saying, what's preventing a child from naturally being 7 hours driving a parent crazy? And the simplest thing is usually the thing. And that's what it was.
So I think everybody who's listening has probably seen somebody walking with a white cane. I mean, I don't think that's a novelty for anybody who would be listening to this podcast. But can you go through a little bit of the technical description about what differentiates your device? And I will ask the OIS team at some point to add a link to a video that you can show. So if people who actually want to see what the device looks like and how it functions on a child, I'll ask them to add that link somehow to the printed material that comes out, and maybe you can give a verbal web address if you have one at the end. We'll get to that. But can you explain to people why this is different? Because I think everybody's thinking, well, what is this thing? If it's not a white cane, how does it really work?
Well, the simplest explanation is that the white cane, when you hold it, you swing it side to side. And what that does is it creates a protective arc that kind of sweeps the area in front of the traveler. And by doing that, you get 2 steps of warning. So that action of continuing to sweep is very difficult for a lot of people, even older adults. And then to respond to the little tip at the bottom also takes quite a bit of intellect to figure that out. But what the belt cane is the belt that you wear, and then magnets attach the cane frame. The cane frame is rectangular, and that is a physical embodiment of that cane arc. So it's pushing it forward sweeps the same amount of area that you would with your white cane, even more efficiently, right? It's like 99% of the time if it's in the right place. Whereas the white cane is 60 to 70% of the time you're going to find everything. So the white cane is still a little like could be invented. You could do more. We could all do more. But this is what this is. You wear it. So it's a fixed frame. So when you come to a wall, that child has to stop. It's like a big crayon or anything for children. It's a big, feeling like they can't ignore this device. And that allows them to understand, right, blocked. They turn very quickly looking for a clear path. So it doesn't take very long for most children to get the clear blocked understanding and understand that they now have to decide. And that's where the concepts start to flood in. They start to learn.
Right. So the description of this is, and maybe I'm going to do it disservice, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the description of it is it's something you wear. It's a belt that goes around. I mean, people who are on TV can see it. I mean, who are watching this podcast can see it. Most people will listen, so they can't. That's why we'll get them in front of it. But it's basically just like a sled almost, just 2 poles connected in the front, a rectangle of white canes, basically. You can picture like 2 white canes coming off your hips, one connecting in the front, so you get this rectangular space in front of you. And if the child turns to the right, the rectangle turns to the right. So you can imagine a protected space in front of them wherever they are, so they can actually walk. Their hands are free. They can develop normal walking skills because they stand up when it's on and they walk just like a regular person. They don't have to worry about holding something in their hand to get that same benefit. So can you use this on any walking age child?
Absolutely. We have multiply impaired teenagers who are using it now. One of the videos that I would share with you would be Phoebe, who her mother came to us when she was 3 years old. She was crawling on the ground. If she would walk, it would be handheld or 2 hands held. But her people around her said, let's hold off on this. I think she'll be okay. So fast forward 4 years, at 7, they finally got her a belt cane. She was taking 3 steps like a toddler, like a 1-year-old, between the mother and the grandmother. It's on the video. And they're like so excited. You took 3 steps. Right next to that is her video of walking all the way down the school hallway and around where you can't see her anymore, and crossing the streets now, learning how to do that. She's now 8, walking slowly, but walking without holding a hand. And that's because she feels protected, she feels informed, she feels balanced from this device. If she had started at 3, if she had started at 2 or 1, I know she would not have so many of the additional motor impairments that she's
So,
demonstrating right now.
and so the concept is that you get this is how they start. Like this is how somebody who's, completely visually impaired, blind, however you want to, whatever terminology this applies to, it doesn't matter. And you start them on this, and then they get to a certain age where they transition to a cane. Is that correct?
The really at the heart of this is for everyone in the world to understand that, like a wheelchair, okay, where your legs physically cannot carry you must have that wheelchair, right? No one is disputing that. I'm not saying you are. But for the white cane, there's still a little bit of a wiggle room. Do they really need it? Could they do it? Isn't it the highest form of blindness is to be without it? It's like, stop. Their eyes are the only thing we need to focus on. If you cannot determine what's your next step is going to be, is this going to be clear or blocked visually, you must have tactile feedback. So this is a form, this rectangle, that is really a great shape for many, many people. You could hold it and push it. You could wear it and push it. This is easy. And I think there's more that we could do, but we need to get behind the idea that a blind person without this touch sensation in front of them is exposed in a way that is really dangerous. We can all understand that. We shouldn't think our blindness, temporary at night, trying to get to the bathroom, is any different from a blindness that is actual and permanent. It's the same. In fact, because you're both going to run into those obstacles. So the blind person should pick up a cane, the sighted person should turn on the light. It's exactly parallel to that. So we shouldn't ask blind people to walk through their house without it or anywhere without it. We should be saying it's a wonderful thing and let's find new iterations. How do we do it in sport? How do we do it everywhere? How do we always include it?
Right. So how much experience have we had with this in the real world?
We put the first belt cane on a child in 2018. And so now we're at 45 countries, and in every state in the United States, there's thousands of kids have been wearing this device. Not that many comparatively.
Right, exactly. And I'll ask the question to the audience the way I asked it myself is, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have never seen a child with this on. And yet we've
That's
all
right.
seen loads of people, loads of children, and who are using white canes and who have probably gone through significant, levels of difficulty trying to get to that point, may have had delay and other issues as a result of not having access to this technology, right? I mean, that's the bottom line, is that you're out there,
Absolutely.
but yet it's not at the level that it should be, because at least, and I'm going to ask you the formal question in a minute, this is significantly better. So how do we know? How do we know that what you're doing is so much better than letting kids just develop normally, eventually get to the point where they get a cane and then go about their lives? What do you see, from a scientific perspective, that leads you to believe that this is significantly better than options than children have had in the past?
Well, I have the science behind me, but let's just think about it in this way. If you're heading towards the subway platform, if you're on the subway platform heading for the track, where does that cane tip have to be? It has to be in front of you, and it has to be covering you every single step. Because if you stop swinging it and leave it to the side, at that moment, you could have the track. You cannot see the track. So you must have the touch feedback. So if the child has the cane behind them, if they have it and they're using it like a Sherpa, if they are leaving it behind and like that is not going to protect them. That is
Right.
not going to show them the subway track drop off. So that's the standard. So every time you see a cane, it's kind of off to the side and it's not really doing its job. And that means they don't know how to use it. So there is a criterion of usage and ability that we must set, that if they don't get to that, and they can't, because it's not the child's fault. It's that difficult. It's deceptively difficult. Everyone thinks, oh, you just swing it. No, it's much harder than that. So what our device does is it makes it much simpler. It keeps the device in the right place. Kids do eventually hold on to it, manipulate it, tap it, bang it against things, scrape it against things. They have to lift it sometimes to get up a step. You can go up and down the steps with it. And what we found first of all, in our study of 11 kids with cortical visual impairment, their gait improved, their pace, their posture, their amount of steps, and the length of steps, all, and even their foot mobility, it all straightened out and went the right way. They stood up and walked. Then we had 100 kids and we looked at their physical activity. And before, it was 80% of the time under video, left alone, sitting. These are kids from 1 to 8. Now, that is not a characteristic. Sitting down and doing nothing. I was just with my 5-year-old grandson, okay? This is not what he wants to do. We change, we go. If I have to put on the television or something to get a moment's peace, but a blind child will just sit. That's a good kid, right? That's where the concept delays come in. You cannot learn anything. So our device showed that, turn that around, 80% now walking. Now they're walking, and I have 7 different physical outcomes, which it could be lying down, sitting down, standing up with assistance, standing with assistance, walking with assistance, standing without holding on is much better than standing, holding on to something, and then walking without holding on and running. And that's what they were. They were not holding on. They were standing, walking, and running. And that's really what we want to see.
So I think we'll both agree that this is significantly better than standard of care right now. So this is much better. What's the problem? What are the issues here? Why is this not everywhere? Why are we not, especially those who are, eye care professionals who treat children or who treat people who've, had visual impairment or blindness as a young person? Why are we not seeing this? Where is the disconnect, and what are the impediments to getting this into the hands or to actually getting it to the bodies of children who need this device for, improved development? Why can't we get it there?
The good news is now that it's covered by most insurance and also the child's individual education plan. So it is educationally and medically necessary. It's recognized as such. So any new device, I think, is going to go through a process of, is this really a valuable device? I think the other thing now is that we haven't really paid attention and expected more. Why is it a foregone conclusion that they will have motor delays? Why did we set the cane up as something that you first have to be able to walk and talk, and then you get to be safe with the white cane? Why haven't we thought about that a little bit more and thought, gee, walk and then feel safe walking? That seems to be the wrong, the cart before the horse, as my mom would say, right? You have to feel safe first before you do anything, right? You have to feel like I can get up and go over there. I have enough light to get there. You wouldn't put a sighted child in a dark room and expect them to be as active as when you turn the lights on. It's just not safe for them. So this idea that children are fine, or that they don't want to use the cane, they'll let us know when they need it, that blind kids will kind of help us understand. We have to understand that whatever they receive, that's their self-image. So if they continue, like they're blind, but they have a sighted sibling who races across the room. Imagine them trying to work out, I can't, what is it that they got that I don't got, right? And so this understanding of blindness is somehow being a seer, having extra sensory perception, that somehow will be okay. It's not a fair assessment of a blind child. We need to be realistic about blindness and say, hey, if you can't see, but you can feel, let's give them better ways to feel their way through. Now, they have tried toys. They have tried other things that they have to hold on to, and they've never done a research study to evaluate the impact of putting a toy as a device for a blind child. They just sort of say, okay, use it. But when you do, you find that the child lets go of the toy, or they are leaning over and pushing it in a posture that is not really a good posture as they outgrow the toy, and they never can take that toy outside, to the park, everywhere they need to walk. There's no expectation to do your daily physical activity hours independently as a blind child. And that's simply because to expect it without this device is unfair to the child because it exposes them to injury.
Right,
So
right.
it
So,
really is about
so
that.
how is the pediatric I mean, I would imagine that probably one of the portals to entry here would be some sort of referral process from pediatric ophthalmology. Has the pediatric ophthalmology community, what's their commentary been on this? I'm sure you've presented, I'm sure you've shown data. What has been their response?
Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics gave us an award for one of the best, presentations, and also Vision 2025. We've been recognized for the outcomes of our research as being significant. But in this population, like many populations, it's not always clear who does this now, who is the
Right.
person in charge. So I would suggest, yes, if we could get this to be, it is an assistive technology device. It is covered. So it is a good way to start. Like I could just now see a pediatric ophthalmologist now having such wonderful news to deliver. It used to be, listen, I got to tell you the hard facts about this. Your child is going to be delayed. Now you could say, hey, if we have a device now that eliminates the motor delay, and through eliminating the motor delay, we now is the motor is the gateway. Walking is the gateway to all of the other concepts, language, social skills, everything. So it is a great new message for the pediatric ophthalmologist that to then say, this is a device. And right, is it the physical therapist or is it the orientation and mobility specialist? Is it the early intervention specialist? Not every county not every parent, wherever they live, has access to an orientation and mobility specialist. So it really, I think the ophthalmology community could be the start point for it, for whatever way to get through to this assistive technology and see that they get the word that now there's a new outcome that is possible, and it makes perfect sense. This is the first white cane. And yes, if you are a fully formed human being and just blind, that you may transition to a white cane, 6, 7 years old. You might transition to pushing it, not holding it before that. So there is a transition period because I've had kids with intellectual delays who have transitioned to a white cane. And they show a real understanding that they want to be behind it. Their arc isn't perfect, but they're not taking a step until they check it with that cane. So that's all we really need is they understand. They're still nonverbal. They still can't really explain it to us, but they get it. So safety is a basic human need that most human beings, regardless of their intellect, can understand self-protection. So makes it much easier to get that protection.
So does a pediatric, I mean, and again, having that this is not my area of expertise, but so if you evaluate or at some point somebody, it's a pediatrician, a pediatric ophthalmologist, whoever it is, understands that this child's going to need vision services, really it's the orientation and mobility specialist community that needs to know that this should be the first choice for, a child. Is that not correct? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, and I don't understand why I'm not seeing this in the community yet for these visually impaired children. There's some disconnect in my mind and I just can't quite figure it out. And maybe that's part of the reason
I
that we
think
need to
it's
get
the
you more
literature.
funding.
The literature has failed to call out the white cane as being too hard for this population. And by continuing to, we just had White Cane Day on October 15th every year. And you will look at the videos, and I would not take any of those kids to the New York subway and ask them to independently locate the track because their cane skills will not protect them. And that is the standard that we've never had in this community, that we have to first and foremost make them feel safe with the device. We've always just thought, oh, they'll use a cane eventually, and everything is fine until then. And they've got parents and teachers who feel like failures because in the textbook, they make it sound so simple. Just hand them the cane, they'll walk in the middle of the hallway without it. So they want to blame themselves, the child, that they're not meeting the expectations in the textbooks that they should somehow be able to use this device. But the white cane was invented for blind men who became blind, who had spent the first 20 of the years of their life fully formed. They went into battle, they lost their vision. They didn't even lose their intellect. So this white cane was made, is difficult to use. If you look back at the history, you will see that they admit this is a very difficult device to use. It takes hours and hours and hours of instruction for an adult to learn how to use it correctly and to orient. It was never invented for a child. So the idea that a child should somehow be able to use an adult tool that is so difficult for adults to learn, that's never been said out loud. I'm taking the quiet part of the nasty underbelly of these motor delays that you see walking into your clinic and saying somebody should have said something sooner and expected that a human being actually who has nothing wrong with their legs, nothing wrong with their mind, nothing wrong with anything, has a reason for avoiding danger, and that we should do something about it through reimagining that white cane, which was such a huge advancement. Before that, it was the dog, and before that was nothing, right? So 1945, we go, aha, let's do something. But that's because the blind soldier demanded something, right? They were handed these short little Lions Club canes and said, listen, go out, you'll be fine. And they came back afraid. They said, I can't go out. I'm tripping, I'm falling. I know where I am, but the danger of walking is not. So they demanded a better tool and they got it. The problem with toddlers is they don't have any language. So the only way they can show you is how they've been showing us is by sitting down and on strike. They're not going to walk until they can figure out how to do it more safely. And we need to respect that that's a good outward visible sign that they need some tool to allow them to feel safe enough to walk.
So this is, I mean, and look, and that's the fundamental reason I wanted you on here, right? Because, I think a lot of people, including myself in this community of ophthalmology innovators and eye care providers and whoever else listens to these, is focused on maybe trying to eliminate entirely the need for your device one day, preventing blindness in all forms, right? That would make us both very happy, right? We would both be thrilled if that was the case, right?
Yes.
But the fact is that we're spending billions and billions of dollars in trying to cure disease. And here's something that's so simple that can improve the lives and the mobility of people who are not going to be able to be cured. And we could make their development so much better. And yet here it is not hitting the mainstream and not becoming standard care the way it should. So that's the reason that you're here. That's the reason why I want you to have you here. How was the business funded up to now?
Well, it's a nonprofit because in this space of blindness, we definitely are joining on that is the community standard. And so we've been funded through self-funding, through grants, and through generosity of donations. And then, of course, our goal is, to have these belt canes be the standard of care and go and really develop from there. I see this as a first step. Right. I really want to develop that cane that you could take out on the soccer field. I don't know if you've ever seen Maryland School for Blind Soccer. You go to Google it on YouTube. They take these beautiful, healthy teenage boys, soccer players who run out on the field with their blindfold on. Their minds don't understand the concept of blindness. So they're having visual memories of a soccer field as they run. But that's the visual memory. That's the brain is tricking them. And then all of a sudden, somebody runs into them because they can't see and they can't see, and they have a physical collision. And so then by the end, these beautiful teenage boys have been diminished into these afraid beings. And they're like, a mother, I'm just looking at these. I have a son, I would never do that to him. And yet this is a standard Olympic sport almost. They have blind soccer with little balls, and you cannot explain to them how that you have wheelchair basketball, wheelchair soccer. You have changed the rules for wheelchairs, and in the Olympics, you have a titanium wheelchair you don't use that out on the streets. You only use that to go your fastest on a field.
Right.
They have a rope for the blind runner. They've
Right.
been using ropes for running for blind kids for centuries now, since the first Olympics. There's been no evolution, no belief behind the blind athlete that if you gave him or her a tool that allowed her to detect her path, we have
Right.
GPS systems. We have all the systems now. They could run, they could do so much more. We could find another way, but we just never invested because somehow blindness has been, I don't know, it's the number one or number two worst thing that could ever happen to anybody, right? If you
Right.
ask, would you rather have this or that? Blindness is always like,
Yes.
not blind,
100%.
right?
I get it.
So we don't really understand that if I became blind today, I would be the same person. I just can't see this in front of me. And if you just give me the right tool, I am okay. But we
So,
don't do that for blind
right,
kids.
of course we don't. So how does somebody help? So listen, I mean, you and I are on the same page here. When I heard about this, I'm like, why am I a 57-year-old ophthalmologist and I never heard of this before? It's kind of frustrating for me. And there may be other people who feel the same. So how does somebody help you? If somebody wants to help support you and what do they do? Do they go to your website? What
Yeah.
is the plan for somebody to want to help you help visually impaired children the way you've been doing?
Well, absolutely. We do have a website, safetoddles.org, and we do appreciate any donations towards getting these belt canes out and our message out. But truly, the most important thing would be for us to have a change of heart about blindness. That's my mission, is that we could be accepting of the tools of blindness as what we would expect to see, not something that we would question or wonder if they could do better without it. But that happens. People are confronted on the street saying, "Do you really need that?" And that's a frustration on my part, right? That somehow we've elevated blindness to be something that doesn't need a tool. So if we could, that would be the number one thing is
Right.
that we would have that expectation that, and also mobility visual impairment, which is there's you have some level of light, some level of object perceptions, or you have a lower field loss, or you have CVI, where you have complex. With CVI, you can sit down, make a white box, put a red thing. Their vision is really effective. But in orientation mobility, we have to get up and go to the bathroom, and that changing thing that makes mobility very difficult
Right.
because they can't trust their vision. So help through, yes, uh, donations help us stay here for this community, but also help in the global aspect of help, which is as pediatric ophthalmologists, spread that good word. There is a tool that allows blind children to obtain their motor milestones on time. And that's really a new message that you've never been able to say before, and then help them get to it. We sell them through our website. We are in national seating, and mobility is the largest durable medical equipment supplier, and they have put us in their catalog. And we are here and we are available. You don't have to worry at all about getting this. This is available now.
So I'm going to make a pitch. So we're kind of running out of time, Grace, but I'm going to make a little pitch to the community out here. Look, there are a lot of people who listen to these podcasts, and every single one of us knows somebody who's out there with, some connection to either somebody in the pediatric ophthalmology community, somebody to the optometric community dealing with visual impairment. We have patients. Go to Grace's website. It's www.safetoddles.org. Go there, find the resources. Grace has promised me that she's going to make it easier for you to get information that you can use to help get it into the hands of the people who can help, and let people know that this technology is out there. We have to grassroots help this technology get to the mainstream until we see more formal channels inside the visual impairment community for getting it to children who need this. You have to see some of these videos. I mean, it's just unbelievable that we all have this image and this picture of what a visually impaired child or a blind child looks like and how they walk and how they move. We can change that, physically
Yes.
eliminate that with this technology. It is absolutely fascinating. So go to www.safetoddles.org, find out how you can get information. get it to people who need this, help Safe Toddles become the standard of care. Grace, I don't know what to say. I mean, again, when I first spoke to you, I had the same emotion that I have now, which is that it's incredibly frustrating to see something so relatively easy to propagate, have difficulty, where we can have such a huge impact on a portion of the population that needs, something better. And the fact that it's challenging for you is upsetting. And I'm hoping that your presence here on this podcast helps spread the word a little bit. I hope that people respond to this and get out there and try and figure out how to help propagate your technology. I am obviously going to do what I can as well. And I hope that at some point down the road, this is, out in the world, changing the lives of children with visual impairment for the better on a much grander scale. So thank you again for taking the time to be here. Again, anybody needs any information, please go to safetoddles.org and see how you can help. To the OIS podcast audience, thank you for listening today. Thank you for taking the time. And Dr. Grace Ambrose-Zaken, thanks again for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. It was wonderful. I appreciate that.